In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to make a dynamic enemy. So at the moment, when I press play, I have a sphere that's controlled by the keyboard. When the sphere picks up, or runs into a cube, it disappears and adds 1 point to our dynamic score. And when I hit an enemy, it removes 1 point from our score. What I would like to do is make this a little more difficult and have the enemies actually follow my player around. So it needs to sort of dodge them and move quickly. And the way that we can do that is just to add a simple enemy follow script to our cylinder or our enemy in the scene. So down the bottom in my assets window, I've created a new script called enemy follow. And when I open that up, it's very simple, 2 variables and 2 lines of code. So we start by creating a public float for speed. So this will be how fast your enemy moves. And we also have a public game object called target. So this lets the enemy know what it's actually looking at and what it needs to move towards. In our update function, we then use 2 pieces of transform code. So the first one is a transform translate, which means it's actually going to move its position on the X, Y, and Z axes. Because we're dealing with the X, Y, and Z axes, the first part that we put in our brackets is vector 3. On the vector 3, we want it to move forward, and we want it to move forward times whatever we set as our speed. So that's actually just going to make our cylinder, or the object that we put this script on, move forward at a consistent pace. The line of code underneath this one is another transform code. This one is look at. So essentially what that means is it's going to rotate to face whatever the variable we set as target is. It's just going to look at that target's position at all times. So it's just going to rotate to face it. So these 2 lines of code obviously work well together to make it appear as though the cylinder is following our sphere, but essentially we could use them by themselves as well. So if I just wanted my cylinder to move forward at a particular speed, I could remove this line of code. If I just wanted it to rotate to face a particular object, then I could remove the top line of code. So closing down our script, I'm going to add that now, add that onto my enemy. And when we look at it in the inspector, we can see that we have 2 variables here that need values. So I'm going to set my speed to 0.03. You'll find when we use this move sort of forward on the vector 3, it moves quite quickly. So less than 1 is definitely the way to go. Otherwise, it's going to fly at your player really quickly. And we also need to tell it what it's following. So that's our player. Okay, now with those 2 variables selected, we should be able to play our game. And we can see that all of the cylinders in my scene are moving towards my player at a consistent speed. So as my player moves, it will rotate to face it. And and it just consistently moves forward. So we can see here that they will all, because they're instantiating, all have that same script on them. So as I move about my maze, it's going to become more and more difficult to avoid them. When we do intersect, they disappear and 1 point removes from my score.